I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and behind me has to be one of the most important new SUVs of 2025. This is the Geely Starray EM-i. It's a new Chinese plug-in hybrid, a Toyota RAV4 competitor. The headline fact about the car, it's 40 grand plus on-road costs. And that's for the top of the range, 39,990. You can get the base model for 37,490 plus on-roads. That simply makes the Starray many thousands of dollars cheaper than a CX-5, RAV4, Tucson, Sportage, Tiggo. So is there a catch to this plug-in hybrid that promises to be able to do, close to 100 Ks of electric running and then use very little fuel after that? Well, we're going to be assessing all of those facts in today's video. We're going to check out the interior, the backseat and the boot. We'll discuss my actual running costs out in the real world, and we'll take this vehicle for a comprehensive drive on Australian roads, because Australia is the first market outside of China to receive this Geely. So this is, its first real test on non-Chinese roads. But before we get started, hit subscribe below and the notification bell.
Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by Budget Direct. Pricing for the Starray EM-i really came down to the wire. One price leaked about 10 days ago from the time that I'm speaking to you here on camera, and it was a few $1,000s higher than what Geely Australia actually managed to extract from the Chinese factory. And frankly, the positioning of the cars, 37,490 for the base model, confusingly called complete when it is clearly not complete because there's a 39,990 Inspire above it, which we're sitting in here. Clearly that pricing is meant to push almost everybody into the Inspire, because frankly, it's $2,500 very well spent. Upgrading into the Inspire gets you 19-inch wheels outside, which look good, an opening panoramic sunroof, cooled seats with memory, a better stereo, and a few other pieces of fruit, easily worth the upgrade cost. What you're getting inside the Starray EM-i is frankly an absolutely fine interior for a midsize SUV, even quite good. And if you go and test drive a bunch of vehicles in this class, and then you come to the Starray EM-i, I think you'll find its interior is really quite pleasant for a mainstream vehicle. It's not luxury, and Geely's not trying to be luxury, because within their group, they have higher end brands, either the Chinese stuff like Zeekr and Lynk & Co, or the European brands like Volvo and Polestar. Geely is meant to be like the Toyota of the group, and that makes sense when you sit in the cabin. The materials are just fine. It's that typical Chinese fare of kind of like soft touch vinyl covering almost everything that you see. But that's okay in the Inspire because we have seat cooling. So even if you go for the black interior, which is a no-cost option, just like the white interior, you don't get too hot thanks to the coolers in the seats. Ahead of us, a pretty cool-looking two-tone steering wheel, again covered in the same sort of slushy vinyl, but with orange stitching, kind of a nice highlight. Easy, hard shortcuts for some of the infotainment. And speaking of, we've got a 15-inch screen over here, a very nice thin 10-inch screen for the driver with all your key information, and then a nice bright color head-up display as well. Now, the infotainment system itself is quite snappy and quite easy to navigate, because effectively Geely just borrowed the system from its in-house smartphone manufacturer, as you do, but it also has wireless Apple CarPlay. Android Auto will be added in the start of 2026 via an over-the-air update. The premium audio in the Inspire is perfectly fine, sounds pretty good. Wireless charging down here, small cup holders, bit of storage in the center, decent sized door bins, and reasonable ergonomics apart from one problem, and that's that the powered seats don't have enough ways of adjustment. In particular, you can't adjust the under thigh angle, the bit that tilts forward at the front to support your legs. So if you have longer legs, you will find that they sort of float in the air up the front. However, go and jump in the car at a showroom, test drive it, and see if it works for you. Because on the whole, the front cabin of the Starray for 40 grand is pretty good. Let's check out the back seats. Most things in row 2 of the Starray are just what you'd expect from the midsize SUV class, which is fine, because frankly, we don't really need this vehicle to reinvent the wheel. Although, as we'll see when we take it for a drive, the hybrid system in this vehicle is pretty impressive. But the main parts of the back seat are just fine. Good space. For myself at 6 foot or 183 centimeters, headroom's good even with the sunroof on the Inspire. Legroom is very sufficient. Toe room's a bit pinched, but no big deal. And there's absolutely no hump in the floor back here, so you could possibly get a third person in the center. And this is another one of those weird cars that you and I talk about from time to time, where there's actually more support in the back seat for my legs than in the front. Although it seems to be an emerging trend that for Chinese vehicles from the midsize and large class, their back seat tends to be really comfortable, more so than non-Chinese brands. You are also getting air vents back here, 2 USB ports, a C and an A, a flip down armrest with a couple of shallow cup holders in it, but also some things that you don't expect to see in most rivals, including the continuation of squidgy materials to the back. Most Western rivals to this car revert to hard, scratchy, cheap materials in row 2, not the Starray. And we are looking forward at a bizarre inclusion on all of the vehicles from the launch, which is like a soft pillow for the front seats. At this point, I'm not certain whether it's included. It's definitely interesting, but from the back here, it looks a touch aftermarket, but it does say Geely, so I don't think it is aftermarket. Anyway, let's check out the boot. Moving around the back of the Starray EM-i now, I think it is worth a word on styling. It's not up to me to tell you how to feel about the look of cars, but frankly, I think for a mainstream affordable SUV, the Starray looks pretty good. Geely have hired a bunch of international designers, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why this car just looks very mid-market. But frankly, compared to some of the dog's breakfasts out there in the mid-size SUV space, I think they've executed this shape quite well. You can let me know what you think down below in the comments. This color is jungle green. It's $600. I think that's $600 well spent. Looks nice. Power tailgate is a feature of the top spec car, but of course the boot is the same across the range. 528 litres of space is fine for this class. It's pretty big, it's pretty square. It's a little bit shallow in terms of the kind of half coupe cutaway of the tailgate, but we've got a blind there, firm floor. That opens up to reveal space for your charging cables, but no spare wheel and tyre on this car. However, we can just close that power tailgate. And just before we take the Starray EM-i for a drive, I want to tell you what fuel economy I've actually been getting. Next up, let's discuss running costs, which differ based on whether you'll charge the Starray's battery. It has a 17 kilowatt hour usable LFP battery and also a 51 litre petrol tank. Now on electric range only, I was able to get 67 kilometers, which is quite far off the 83 kilometer claim, but it actually makes sense because you're only allowed to use the top 80% of the battery in the Starray. The system keeps the last 20% in reserve to help out the petrol engine and make sure the SUV always feels powerful. Now, if you infer 67 kilometers on 80%, out to 100%, you do land at 83 kilometers. The problem is you just can't actually use all of it. But what is the fuel consumption like once the engine has forced itself back on at 20% state of charge? Well, I got 7 litres per 100 kilometers urban, which is not that great. It's a bit more than a Toyota RAV4 hybrid. I got 5.9 litres per 100 kilometers on the highway, which is okay, and 5.6 litres per 100 kilometers on a flowing country road, which is pretty good. Servicing is required every 12 months or 15,000 kilometers, and the first 5 years adds up to $1,932. However, you can currently get the first 3 years of servicing included for free if you buy the Starray before the end of November. The warranty is pretty good actually. 7 years unlimited kilometers on the vehicle, 8 years unlimited kilometers on the high voltage components, including the battery. So time to have our first drive in the Starray EM-i here in Australia. Now, bit of an outfit change, partially because the Starray was launched up in the Hunter Valley where there's heaps of good challenging country roads, and that's where I test cars by myself for reviews that you see on Chasing Cars, so that's great. But there's not many urban roads and bumps and commuting and things to be done. So I took a Starray off the launch, drove it for another week, integrated it into my life, because really urban areas is where hybrid SUVs like this are going to ply their trade much of the time. And what I can tell you is that in all those environments, country roads, urban roads, and major highways, the Starray has things that it does well and things that it does poorly in terms of the driving experience. But on the whole, this SUV is actually quite pleasant to drive, and particularly at its price, I think it is definitely competent enough. It doesn't rule itself out on the basis of its driving dynamics, but of course, there are things that can be improved in this vehicle. But let's start with the powertrain, because the hybrid system in the Starray EM-i is a bit more complicated than what you see in like the Toyota RAV4 hybrid, Hyundai Tucson, Kia Sportage hybrid, all vehicles that we think are really good, but they cost quite a bit more than the Starray EM-i. So is there a catch here? Are you losing out in some area? Well, the answer is not really, particularly if you're going to be able to put a charge into the battery of the Starray. And that's because it actually drives more like an EV than a petrol SUV if you have a bit of charge in it. It has a 160 kilowatt, 262 Newton meter electric motor on the front axle. And it's only front wheel drive, no all wheel drive is planned for this platform at this point in time. That's a nice big electric motor, quite powerful, and it makes the Starray feel really peppy. But that's mostly the case if you have charge in the battery. Now, the Starray EM-i won't let you run that battery down past about 20% because it's trying to keep enough charge in there so you always feel like you've got a nice amount of electric power available. And that does work most of the time, particularly here in the suburbs, in town, it always feels peppy. Where it doesn't work as well is on the highway where you're doing 110 kilometers per hour here in Australia. You hit a long hilly section, such as on the freeway from Sydney to Newcastle, and then the petrol engine is really called into use a lot of the time to act as a generator to try and keep that battery topped up. The only problem is the petrol engine isn't very powerful. It's only got about 70 kilowatts of power, so it's got to rev quite hard to generate enough electric power, and it becomes quite unruly and raucous. That being said, the petrol engine in the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid also becomes quite unruly and raucous when it's called upon for extensive use in similar situations. So the Starray is not exactly unique in that situation. It's just that it's so polished and so quiet and so refined most of the time, you really hear that petrol engine. It's sort of running away now. I can feel the vibration, and we're only doing a low speed drive here in the burbs. I'm just pointing out it is a factor. Probably more of an issue is the way the suspension has been tuned in the Starray. It is just way too soft. Now, apparently Australia and Europe actually does get a firmer tune than what the Chinese receive, which is incredibly soft. However, it just hasn't gone far enough. Now, Geely shouldn't overreact and make this car really stiff, because what actually needs to be solved is the body control. Soft, comfortable ride quality, not really that much of an issue. The problem is that it's paired to a lack of discipline in the damping in the Starray. So on country roads at higher speeds, 80, 100 kilometers per hour, as you start to hit undulations in the road and bumps and imperfections, the Starray just pogos over them, and it can't sort of get its body under control quick enough, and that is a bit of an unpleasant experience. It's the kind of thing that can make kids car sick, and it just means you're not getting a good sort of contact patch on the ground as you're pogoing. That definitely needs to be fixed. But for most of the time, it's not noticeable, and again, I think it's livable, just an area of improvement for the Starray in future. Similarly, the steering, very light, very dead on center. That needs to be sharpened up. That should be doable and fixable. That's just software, really, at the end of the day. But there's lots of good things too. Very quiet in the cabin, very minimal road noise, good stereo, quite comfortable seats, reasonable ergonomics. Things are where you would expect them to be. The Starray is quite easy and livable to drive day to day, and as a nice, affordable family SUV, it's pretty polished most of the time. One big area that needs attention, though, is safety technology. It is overbearing, which is quite interesting given we appear to be living in an era where there's a bit of a snap back against overbearing safety features. No issues with false positives on the AEB, but the problem is the oversensitive driver monitoring. Like, your eyes are on the road, there's nothing more you can do, and the system is going off saying, please pay attention to the road. It's like, what can I do with that information? So I have to deactivate that every time. Similarly, the speed warning, oversensitive, picks up signs in car parks, starts abusing you for going over speed. That has to be turned off every time. Other manufacturers allow you to turn that feature off and it stays off. That's legal in Australia, not in the Geely for some reason. The lane keep assist, constantly pulling at the steering wheel, too sensitive. This stuff is so important to get right so that drivers keep it switched on, and therefore it can help you. In the Starray, you've got to turn it off and then you're on your own. So what's my verdict on the new Geely Starray EM-i? Well, frankly, this hybrid SUV is really impressive because of what it delivers at such an affordable price. Is the Starray perfect? Absolutely not. There's definitely things that Geely can work on. In particular, the body control, which isn't terrible. It's actually better than some of its rival SUVs, but could just be more tied down for the sorts of roads we have here in Australia, particularly in rural areas where this vehicle has easily sufficient range to do plenty of driving. But frankly, at $39,990 plus on roads for this top spec version, the Starray doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be adequate. And frankly, I think it's more than adequate. I would be hitting the red emergency buttons all around me if I worked for a large legacy manufacturer taking a test drive in the Geely Starray EM-i. It drives down the cost of entry into a properly capable plug-in hybrid midsize SUV for Australian families, and that's really worth something. As for things like how this vehicle will survive many years into the future, or as residuals, unfortunately, I've misplaced my crystal ball. But all I would say is that at least Geely isn't exactly new to car making. They've been doing it for decades in China, and they went out and purchased the know-how of brands like Volvo. So I think that probably counts for something. Look, I'm personally keen to put this car into a comparison test to see how it really fares against its hybrid rivals, both from Chinese brands and non-Chinese brands. Let us know if you'd like to see that. Let me know any of your other thoughts down below in the comments. While you're there, hit subscribe and the notification bell for more videos like this. And as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.